And today we have a research investigator. His name is Armando Mei. He is a investigative journalist, worked for prominent newspapers. He's a self-trained Egyptologist, and he's the author of 36,400 BC. He's written other books. His latest book is called Ancient Mysteries. You can get it on Amazon or your local publisher. And he has written and continues to write for Ancient Origins, which is an online publication. His work is prominent. I just have been reading him for the last few years, and he's coming to us from Italy today. I'm really happy to have him on the program. Armando, how are you? How you doing?
Hello, Cliff. Fine. Thank you for inviting me to your Ancient Earth. And greetings to you and your audience from Italy.
Fantastic.
I'm very pleased to share with you results of my investigation on the pyramids mystery. And I hope that my assumptions could help to improve the studies and researches on ancient mysteries in the effort to shed light on humankind's origins.
All right. Hey, let's jump into this. You have uncovered some very interesting aspects of the Giza Plateau and ancient pre-dynastic and dynastic people. I'm curious about your research. You talk about the influence that Robert Bauval and Graham Hancock had on you in your work. What specifically was important for you in their work? Was it the Orion work that Bauval came up with, or was it more that as a collective team of authors, their work triggered some interest of yours into your personal research on the Giza Plateau?
Well, I'm very fascinated by the ancient civilization since I was very young. And I bought my first book on the mysteries of the pyramids when I was 14. I bought the book wrote by Alan Gardiner, a very famous Egyptologist. And the title is The Egyptian Civilization, because I was very interested to know more about the pyramids, who built them, when the pyramids were built, and how did they build the pyramids. That is still a mystery. So in the time I learned that pyramids were the last boat of some pharaohs of the fourth dynasty, Cheops, Khafre, and Mycerinus. And I also learned that the pyramids were built by the workers of those pharaohs. And that, for example, the Great Pyramid was built with heavy stones, granite, of an average weight of 76 tons. So when I learned all this, some doubts originated. And I want to know more about all this. So I met the so-called alternative researchers, such as Robert Bauval, Graham Hancock, and many other, John Anthony West, for example, and many other authors. And I began to understand that maybe the history of ancient Egypt must be rewritten. Partially when I studied the theory of Robert Bauval, the Orion correlation theory, because a new world opened, a new point of view emerged with Robert Bauval. So I was very fascinated, and I follow his models to go ahead with my researches on the mysteries of the pyramids. And I joined in 2009 the International Conference on Ancient Mysteries, on Ancient Studies at Zayed University in Dubai, when I presented the first step of my theory that then I published in my book, 36,400 Before Christ, The God's Secrets.
Fantastic. Is it your belief that the dynastics were the ones who were the architects of the Giza Plateau? or is it an earlier civilization that we don't know about that had masterful sacred geometry and also the ability to create and erect a massive stone structure like the Great Pyramid and also the Sphinx and other buildings in that area?
Well, I'm firmly pursue that there was an early civilization. I believe that the pyramids of Giza were not built by the dynastic Egyptians. And I would like to explain, if you like, a model I followed to better focus the meaning of my researches. Along the time, many Egyptologists gave a great support in the effort to shed light on the mysteries of the past. And I have to say that they made a great job. And we must be grateful for their attitude and sacrifice. But at the same time, I must say that almost all theories concerning the mysteries of Giza are based on only subjective interpretation without proof. Times ago, I had a call with my good friend Jean-Paul Boval, Robert's brother, and we discussed about the secret key to achieve the mysteries of the pyramid civilization. That's why I believe that the pyramids of Giza were built by an early civilization. Because he suggested an interesting metaphorical example to understand the path we must follow to understand the mysteries of the past. Just a little example, please follow me. Imagine just for a while to bring an A4 paper, the A4 paper with descriptions. And it has precise dimensions, 21 centimeters for 29.7. Now, we know that 21 is an entire number, but why 29.7 and not an entire number, I don't know, such as 29, for example, or 30? Because there is a ratio in its size. Because the relationship between numbers gives as a result a number 1.4142. That is exactly the square root of a number. Now, what does it mean, all this? The answer is that in 5,000 or 10,000 years, the future generation of archaeologists that will have the chance to find the A4 that we have in our hand, very probably they will not understand the alphabet or the words inscribed, but using the universal language through its tool that is the number, they will discover that in our time, we were able to calculate relationship among numbers and the square roots of a number. This is the only way to convey a message in the future, because the number, the tool of the universal language, has no time and space. So, if the lost civilization of Giza was an advanced civilization, the only way to convey their message in the future and to tell us that they live in the distant past is through the science, and the science is the number.
So I guess my next question for you is that if you are following the ancient alien hypothesis, a lot of those people in that field believe that off-world people from different planets built the pyramid. Here on Earth Ancients, we are more focused on an ancient unknown civilization that we don't have a record of, but they survived a great cataclysm, and a number of these individuals survived who had a great engineering and architectural abilities, and they are the architects behind the Giza Plateau. What do you say about that? What would you say more specifically, Armando, about the people? I want to hear from you your understanding of the people who conceived and built
I
the
will
pyramid?
answer in few words, Cliff, about aliens or possible humankind different evolution than we know. I don't know about aliens. We have not enough evidences to stay to build, or they build the monuments of Giza all around the world. It is one of the greatest question mark about the story of humankind's evolution. Since the middle of the last century, the quest concerning a possible contact with extraterrestrial civilization in the ancient past blew up, especially when Zecharia Sitchin translated the famous Sumerian tablets. And it told a very fascinating story about civilization coming from outer space, which colonized Earth. All that marked the beginning of a new stage in the study of the ancient civilizations, a new model of investigation on the mysteries of the past that involved many researchers and authors, such as Eric von Däniken, for example, so Giorgio Tsoukalos, or Nick Pope, David Childress, for example, following the theory of the ancient astronauts. And I had to say that many clues seem to suggest a possible contact with alien civilizations in the past. Artifacts, ancient texts, monuments seems to confirm the theory of ancient astronauts. But I am the man of the doubt. And along the time, my experience taught me that, unfortunately, what one is observing does not always match with reality. And my doubt originated by a very easy question. What do we know about humankind evolution? Are we really sure, for example, that Darwin's theory is correct? In the last 20 years, how many archaeological and anthropological findings suggest his theory could be incorrect? Are we sure that ancient myths told about alien civilizations, or rather about human civilization that lived a different evolution than we actually know? I believe that in the next future, the new challenge will be to focus the findings with mind free of stereotypes in the effort to understand the enigma of humankind history. With my theory of the Zep Tepi and the primary planning of Giza, for example, I believe that a small step has been made. And I believe the mystery of Giza can be seen from a different point of view. And the point of view is that maybe they were built by humans and not by aliens. We also have some artifacts that were found in Egypt, such as the Hermitage Papyrus, for example, that told of witness of the ancient cataclysm occurred in between 11,000 and 9,000 before Christ. So the famous Great Flood. And very likely, I believe that the pyramids were built by humans, but before the Great Flood. So when the lost civilization of Giza lived the golden age during the Zep Tepi.
Okay. You describe the harmonic design, or the harmony between the pyramids and the Sphinx and the other buildings that are on the plateau. Was there a specific purpose in mind when they laid that out and designed it in terms of the human being, the physiology of the human and its connection with the cosmos and Earth and things like that? Can you talk a little bit about your research and what you discovered about the design of the Giza Plateau?
Well, I went to Giza many times, exploring the Giza Plateau and studying the pyramids and other monuments. And I have to say that the buildings, particularly the pyramids that we know better, but also some other monuments such as the tomb of Kenkau's queen, for example, or the NC2 tombs, also the temples down the Sphinx, have the many shapes that are very, very interesting. And what is interesting is the size of the temples that seems to be built in according with the cosmos and the stars and planets particularly. You have to know that many times ago, I was studying the Great Pyramid when I received an email by a very famous Egyptologist, that is John Ward, that month ago discovered some tombs in the south of Egypt. And I received this email, and he suggests to study the southeast of Giza, and particularly the Kenkau's tomb, because he found something interesting in this unknown monument. So he caught me by surprise, because I have never studied that monument. So in the time, after a very hard job of investigation, maybe I discovered one of the forgotten pieces of the primary planning of Giza. Why I'm saying that? Because the Kenkau's mastaba is very interesting monument, with very particular shapes. We don't know, for example, the monument seems to be built in two stages. The lower part, for example, which is with any doubt very mysterious, and the top of the monument that was clearly built during the dynastic age. So it was built in two different times.
Oh, like kind of like the Sphinx, where it was the original design was one people, and then the pharaohs came and maybe added to it as it got older or something. No, I'm talking about the monument you're speaking about. You're saying the different stages of construction.
It's a different type of construction, but very probably it was built during the same time than the pyramids and the Sphinx.
Okay.
So all the monuments that were part of the primary planning of Giza were built at the same time and same period.
Okay.
So why the monuments, the tomb of the Queen Kenkau is very particular? Because of its shapes. You have to know that from east to west, the lower part is totally carved in the rock, and it looks like a spiral. And we know that the spiral is hermetically connected to the Great Mother's myth, for example, symbolizing fertility, growth, plenty. And we have also another interesting clue, that is the Kenkau's names. The Kenkau's means who rules on the spirits. So this is the same function, and it's the same function of Isis as Osiris' wife and afterlife goddess. And if we reproduce on a plane the spiral carved at the base of Kenkau's mastaba, this is very interesting. The result is a design that looks like the star Sirius orbit. And last, if we observe the ridge, the west side of the ridge, so the lower part of the mastaba, we can see many water erosion evidences that are very similar to the Sphinx erosion. So we have some evidences that reminded that the goddess worshipped by the Egyptians, and at the same time we can assume that the lower carved part of the mastaba has the same age of the Sphinx because of the same water erosion clues. So when I studied the monuments, this is just only the beginning. I try to put together all those clues, and before any conclusion, I needed to explore the sky to verify a possible correlation between that monument and the star Sirius. So I shifted back the time, the sky, Over the 10,500 BC, so that is the time of the Orion correlation theory by Robert Bauval. So I shift the time at 36,400 before Christ. Observing the map, I saw many interesting clues that are very, very interesting. You have to know that at the dawn of the vernal equinox, the monuments seems to be perfectly aligned with the constellation. So the Lion constellation with the Sphinx, the Orion constellation with the Orion constellation with the pyramids. But what is amazing in the astronomical map at 36,400 before Christ is the presence of Sirius in the sky that is totally absent in the Orion correlation of Bauval's, and is near the Orion constellation and is visible from Giza. So there are many guidelines that proving the concept of new beginning and all in the astronomical map at 36,000. For example, with the star Sirius, there are all the satellite, the moon, for example. The moon, for example, is new moon period, having just few minutes of the new lunar phase. So it's a kind of indication of a new beginning, a new phase of the history. And the planets' position at the dawn are very, very interesting because they are all positioned along the ecliptic in the southeast hemisphere. And they are visible only the planets associated with the days of the week, for example. In addition, it's very, very intriguing the position of the planet Saturn, that is the planet of the rest, for example, that is in the southwest, the so-called place of the dead for the ancient Egyptians. And this position is very fascinating because of the Hebrew tradition, for example. In fact, they consider Saturday the day of the rest, dedicated to celebrate the Lord. And the question is, does it mean that Hebrew tradition could be influenced by the Zep Tepi memories? And I believe it's a topic very interesting to be analyzed. But coming back to Ken Kawa's tomb, I found some interesting clues that could show the connection between that monument and star Sirius in the inventory stele. Because I noted that its original translation seems to be incorrect. There are some basic mistakes that could change the real message of the stele. Because according to the Egyptologists, the description is Cheops found the house of Isis, ruling over the pyramids, was near the house of the Sphinx, above or between the north, the west of the house. But I noted that the hieroglyphic that means near or beside was translated just only once. Meanwhile, it is inscribed twice, and this is a very interesting detail. So the correct translation is, he, Cheops, found the house of Isis was near the pyramid and beside the house of the Sphinx, above, between the north and the west of the house. What are the evidence we have from this translation? First, that the house of Isis was between the pyramids and the Sphinx. Second, that its geographical position is from the north to the west through the Sphinx. And what is the monument corresponding to that information? Of course, the carved bridge on which Ken Kawas built her mastaba. So there are lots of clues suggesting its correlation with the stars Sirius. And for example, if we observe the astronomical map at 36 before Christ, at the naked eye, Sirius is very close to the Orion constellation and far away from the Lion constellation. And also we observe in the sky tonight, for example, we have a confirmation. So if the mastaba is the image of Sirius on Earth, it must be closer to the pyramids and farthest from the Sphinx, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But if we look at the monument's disposition, the mastaba is closer to the Sphinx. So it's a mistake? Absolutely not, because Sirius is closer to Regulus in light years and farther than Orion. So it means that the builders had a perfect knowledge of astronomy. They perfectly know the astronomical distances between stars, constellations, and planets.
Let me just ask you this. I want to interrupt you for a minute. Why care about an alignment with a constellation? What is the importance of aligning these massive, massive buildings with a constellational alignment in the heavens?
Yes, as I said before, it's a message that came from the past. It's a message, and they built all those monuments with a very heavy effort to build all those monuments.
Yeah, huge.
We
huge
know
deal.
that the Great Pyramid, for example, is formed by 2,300,000 block of stones in limestones, sandstones, and granite.
Yeah.
So a large number of stones were put together on the Giza Plateau. Why? Because I believe that was the only way to bring our attention to those monuments and study the monuments from a scientific point of view, using the language of the universe to understand what was their science, to know their mysteries, their knowledges. In fact, I have to say that times ago I was studying the second pyramid, for example, the pyramid of Khafre, and I discovered in 2009, I discovered an intriguing correlation between the sides of the monuments and the dimensionless number 137. That is a number very, very important for the physicians. For example, Max Lederman studied the number 137 and he made crazy on this number because he never understand. And actually, any physician understand what is the purpose and meaning of that number. That the builders of the pyramids still know. And I wrote a book times ago on that topics. And I have to say that maybe I found the key to understand what was the purpose of the number 137, and the model originated from the study of the pyramids to produce energy.
You talk a lot about the emerald tablets and thought. How does the emerald tablets play into the pyramid's construction? Do you have evidence of them actually having information that was used? Because I always thought it was a myth, because thought is a god. And of course,
yes.
in mythology, at one point, he may have been a human.
Yes, the emerald tablets are a myth in this moment because anyone have ever found this book. But at the same time, if we read the emerald tablets, we can read many topics that are very interesting, straight connected with the science. You have to know that times ago I was in a period of relax because I made a great job on the Giza Plateau. I come back to my home and I need to be quiet for a while. And one evening I was on internet looking for some pictures. And I noted an image with some geometrical figure, for example, triangle, for example. And I made a job drawing a triangle down the pyramids, okay, in direction of the satellite pyramids. At the end of this job, I had an interesting figure because the pyramid looks like the cuneiform inscription of Sumerians. So I I thought, is it possible that on the pyramids, the pyramids could be a Sumerian inscription using that devices? I translated the letters, and at the end I had the following sentence: Gal Zu Tehu, that translating from the Sumerian means the savant, the great savant, the great savant Thoth. Tehu is the name of Thoth we found in the Book of Death, Egyptian Book of Death. So it could be that there is a great connection between the pyramids, Thoth, and maybe with the emerald tablets, because in the emerald tablets, Thoth talk about the land who has his name. So the land with his name maybe could be the Giza Plateau.
Wow, that's kind of interesting.
I wrote an article, and also in my book, Ancient Mysteries, there is a study on that subject that you can, your public, your audience could read to better focus the matter. But it's very, very interesting. There is an interesting correlation between Thoth and the Giza Plateau.
Wow. You have uncovered some interesting astronomical connections at the Sphinx temples.
Yes.
And I'm curious about what you have discovered, because when I was there, the temples are heavily damaged and eroded. But perhaps what you were able to do is look at them from a satellite perspective and how they correlate with the rest of it. What did you discover? I'm curious.
Well, in 2014, I was visiting the temples down the Sphinx because I was very fascinated by the buildings that have large stones and sandstones. They are very fascinating. The Sphinx is a kind of microcosm, very different from the pyramids, and because it is composed by three buildings that are the Sphinx temple, the Temple of the Valley, and the Amenhotep II temple that is on the ridge on the left of the Sphinx. And they are positioned symmetrically, and they seem to be similar in size and shapes. And I believe that both temples were built together with the Sphinx. There are lots of clues suggesting that the temples are more ancient than the Egyptian age. And I believe they are one of the most ancient temples ever built in Egypt and maybe on Earth. 100 of limestone blocks form its basic structure, having an average weight of 200 tons. And the temples seems to be built in two different stages because of the different type of blocks the builder used. At the beginning, the temple was built very probably with limestone block, but during the dynastic age, the Egyptian workers used the granite blocks for restoring the building, very likely because affected by wind and water erosion. And this is very interesting detail because give more sense to the inscription in the inventory stele. And lastly, the unknown Amenhotep II temple built during the New Kingdom and positioned on the little ridge northeast of the Sphinx. Why is interesting this last temple? Actually, it's almost collapsing. Just only few elements still standing, from such as some columns, the entrance, and the stairs complex at the bottom of the buildings. But observing the temple, we can see that some details referring to a possible existence of a preceding monument on which Amenhotep II works build the temple. So maybe where actually is the Amenhotep II temple, very probably there was another structure. The floor, in fact, about destroyed, reveals pieces of an ancient basement, much older than the temple. It is characterized by very large blocks reminding those forming the two temples beneath the Sphinx. Now, all those details obviously needed to be put in order to understand why those monuments were built and what was their purpose. So, observing the astronomical map, I noted the presence of two planets near Regulus, the greatest star of the Lion constellation. And the two planets in the 36,400 before Christ, the two planets are Mercury and Jupiter. So I had two temples and two planets and a number of data to process. And I found the key to understand the mysteries using two mathematical constants, pi and phi, that had a key role. The results of all this confirmed that the builder sites the temple, processing by some planets parameters based on the application of the three main mathematical constants. And I had as results that the temple size is proportionally the same size of the planets. So the astronomical map suggests a precise correlation between Jupiter and Mercury with Regulus during the astronomical time of the Zep Tepi, giving a kind of a microcosm twist of the pyramids, involving the Sphinx and temples as well. So at the end, there was the mystery of Amenhotep II temple. Why was it built there? And I found the answer in the geometry. In fact, if we draw a circle from the temple northeast corner toward the west, and then another circle from the same corner toward the east, we obtain two intersected circles, forming a kind of ellipse throughout the Sphinx pose. Exactly as the ecliptic crossed the pose of the Lion constellation, so the two circles crossed the Sphinx pose. So the Amenhotep's temple disposition was not accidental, but he had a precise function to fix the ecliptic plane at 36,400 before Christ. So while the temple were connected with the Sphinx, so the two planets, Jupiter and Mercury, were connected with Regulus, and the Amenhotep's sign the ecliptic across which the sun arose from the east to west.
Fascinating. Yeah. You know, I was curious to ask you, there is great evidence, and it's been verified that there is a number of tunnels underneath the plateau. And
yes.
Some people have theorized that the Sphinx was a pump of some kind, and water was drawn up through a tunnel, passed up to the Sphinx. The Sphinx collected it and then pumped it into the Great Pyramid. But that's just one tunnel. Apparently, there's a whole system of tunnels underneath the entire Giza Plateau that very few people talk about because the Egyptological community can't explain it. What do you say about the tunnel system? Is there anything that we know or we don't know?
You have to know that during the 90s, many researchers believed that two sphinxes were built on the Giza Plateau. But despite the archaeological campaign, they never found any evidences of a second sphinx at Giza. Why is important this question? Because in the west of Giza, exactly in the opposite with the Sphinx, in the same direction and the same distance, the Sphinx from the Khafre pyramid, from the Khafre pyramid to the west, there is an unknown monument that is known as the NC2 tombs. The NC2 tombs is very important because when it was discovered, it was the monument was full of ibis mummified. But it's very interesting to highlight that in the back of those chambers where the mummified ibis were found, there are many other chambers that lead in the underground of the Giza. And from these places, some conduits originated. They goes in the underground of Giza towards the pyramids. So the characteristic of these conduits are two characteristics are very interesting. First, that there are lots of water erosion, and second, the conduits are characterized by the presence of salt crystals. So maybe in those conduits flowed salt water. Now, from where the salt water came from? You have to know, in 1923, a German scientist, Max Ludwig Blankenhorn, found the clues of an ancient river on the Libyan Mediterranean coast. And he dated the river to 50,000 years ago. And he called it Ur-Nil, or twinned with Nile. And the river flowed across the desert between Libya and Egypt. And he noted in some places interesting artificial conduits characterized the river. Very probably, it originated from the sea and contained salt water. The study was confirmed by Michael Hoffman in his book, Egypt Before the Pharaohs, and by Richard Uden in 1929 in another book. The title is the Libyan Ur-Nil in Ancient Egypt. But also in 1929, the University of Chicago published the results of a geological research made by Stuart Sanford and Jocelyn Arkell in the Fayum region and in the Delta of Nile. And they also found ancient conduits and little rivers originated from the Fayum region and directed to the north of Egypt across the desert toward Giza. And the salt water characterized those conduits. So we have clues suggesting a possible correlation between Giza, salt water, and monuments. But what is the meaning of all this? As I said before, there was this tomb, the NC2 tomb, that is very important because very probably it was a basin in which the salt water was preserved. And it was a device for the function of the pyramids of Giza to produce energy according to a model based on the number 137. So the conduits that are in the underground of Giza have a very interesting and fundamental function.